This is Democracy Watch. Mark, you and I have spoken quite a bit about all of the people that Trump has fired, all the competent people Trump has fired in this administration, but he just hired one election denier. And I know that's not especially surprising, but I want you to explain the ways in which the election denier that he just hired can manifest itself into more danger for this country as we look toward 2026 and 2028.
Yeah, so he hired a lawyer named Kurt Olson, who is kind of an infamous figure in the Stop the Steal movement, the election denier movement, the big lie movement, like call it what you want. But this is a guy who, I assume first came on Donald Trump's radar screen at the same time he came on my radar screen, which was after the 2020 election, when he was urging all kinds of wild-eyed crazy shit theories about what had happened. And he was one of the lawyers who, instigated Donald Trump's, fevered dreams that the elections had been stolen from him. And he was particularly involved in one case that in which Texas sued the four other states directly in the U.S. Supreme Court. Now that case was dismissed. But that's kind of like how he came on my radar screen. Like I said, I suspect that's how he came on most people's radar screen. I was at the time representing President Biden and the Democratic Party in defeating more than 60 lawsuits that had been filed by the Stop the Steal, big lie, election denier crowd on the other side. But he was one of the worst actors in that. And then he reemerged on the scene in the 2022 gubernatorial election in Arizona, when he again advanced crackpot theories there around voting election machines and the gubernatorial election. And then in the post-election, he was actually sanctioned for some of his legal work there by the judge. But look, this is now who Donald Trump has chosen to bring into his administration as what's called a special government employee, which means he can work for the federal government for 120 days without giving up his other clients and his other financial interests. And he has apparently been hired to oversee the review of the 2020 election. Yeah, you got that right. It's not the 2024 election. It's the 2020 election. Donald Trump has brought in this crackpot election denier to try to prove the unprovable, which is that somehow Donald Trump won the election when we all know he didn't. This is a very dangerous development for democracy because what it means is now that the full force of the federal government is now going to be, in witch hunts for people who stood by the election results in 2020 and will be spreading lies and disinformation. And that is all bad, particularly with an unhinged president who has shown a penchant for settling old scores using government lawyers, and also for the 2026 election. I mean, after all, every time these things, gain currency in Donald Trump's orbit, and certainly using the resources of the federal government, we have to worry about how that connects up with troops being deployed in cities, the Department of Justice seeking voter roll information. This is serious stuff. This is not good.
So as we look toward future elections, specifically toward 2026 and 2028, because I understand that maybe 2020 has more to do with Trump's ego than anything else, but what could be the most dangerous aspects of having this person in a position of power as we look toward future elections?
Yeah. So look, this is dangerous on a whole host of levels. I mean, let's talk about some of the most practical ones. We know that one of his interests in the past, one of his obsessions in the past has been wild-eyed, crazy conspiracy theories about vote tabulating machines, right. Voting equipment, and also attacking, mail-in voting.
Right. All of which, by the way, when he had competent people in positions of power, have been disproven.
Correct. All of which have been disproven as nonsense, both in the 2020 election, but also, again, when these were advanced in the 2022 election in Arizona. But the truth is, remember, Donald Trump posted on social media only a few weeks ago that he wants to issue executive orders and otherwise ban certain voting equipment and mail-in voting, right? So this is all sort of lining up to, does Donald Trump have a favorite voting equipment company? I don't know. I mean, one seems to have just been bought by a group of Republicans. I don't know that
Yeah.
that has anything to do with this, but does Donald Trump have a particular thing about vote by mail he wants banned? Well, we know that because the Republican National Committee is constantly in court, picking apart the rules about voting by mail. And that's just the beginning of what these problems can be. As I mentioned, you cannot disconnect that from the fact that the January 6th insurrection came out of these big lies. It came out of this election denialism. And those folks have all been pardoned. And, who knows what some of them may be planning for 2026. And then finally, you have the military being deployed throughout this country in blue cities where, the vote totals are going to matter a lot for who wins and loses elections. At the same time, the Department of Justice is collecting information on every single voter in the country, or at least trying to, and is suing blue states. I'm proud that my law firm and we're intervening in those lawsuits, 8 of them, to stop them from getting that data on behalf of voters. But when you line up all of those facts, it is something to take very, very seriously as we move forward.
And I should note to the point that it's your law firm that is litigating these cases and defending democracy where it matters most, on the front lines in the courts. One small step that we can all take to show some support for Mark and his team is to sign up for Democracy Docket, which is the news outlet he founded to focus on everything voting in elections. It's also a great resource that I use on a daily basis. So I'm going to put the link to that outlet right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Mark, you got to the point that I was ultimately angling toward, and that is that it does seem like he's putting all of the pieces in place that were not in place when he wanted to steal the 2020 election. He had Bill Barr as his attorney general, who called his claims of a stolen election bullshit. Bill Barr is out, Pam Bondi is in, and she's surrounded by other people who are there expressly because they are election deniers. Now he's also giving himself a legal pretext, or attempting to give himself a legal pretext to be able to deploy the troops. And so whereas in 2020, when he wanted to seize the voting machines in Georgia and he didn't have boots on the ground to be able to do that, well, now he's got boots on the ground, and you and I and everybody else watching have seen all the videos across the internet where, this is a lawless militia answerable only to Donald Trump and Stephen Miller, regardless of how extrajudicial the edicts that they're acting seem to be. And so if Donald Trump wants them to seize a voting machine somewhere, are we really relying on ICE to be able to stand up and say no, given everything we've seen thus far? And now we have somebody in a position of power who could lend credence to even the most batshit crazy conspiracy theories, but conspiracy theories that would serve as a basis for him to be able to act on his edicts that say, whatever has to happen in the election for us to win is what needs to happen. And so does it seem like he's putting all of the pieces in place right now to be able to fix the wrongs from 2020 so that he doesn't have to deal with all of those things in 2026 or 2028, those barriers, those obstacles?
Yeah, I want to just speak directly to everybody watching this video. We are going to have elections in 2026, but there is a real open question of how fair and free they will be. At one end of the spectrum, you have the prospect of mass disenfranchisement as all votes on certain types of voting equipment get thrown out because this guy decides he doesn't like the voting equipment and Donald Trump decides he doesn't like the votes. At the other end of the bad possibilities, you've got the U.S. military who is being deployed. And even if they don't seize equipment, look at what the chaos that is being created by them and by, as you mentioned, ICE and other federal law enforcement. City streets closed, gas, pepper spray and gas being dispersed, people being manhandled and dragged away. How the hell are you going to hold a free and fair election if that's going on in and around polling locations? And so that is the reality of what I'm looking out at as someone who has spent 35 years of their career focusing on making elections free and fair.
Yeah.
On trying to make sure that everyone has access to vote. And I have never delivered this kind of message before. I didn't deliver this message in the lead up to 2020. I was one of the loudest voices about recognizing Donald Trump for what he was in 2020. And I took a lot of shit for it. But I wasn't saying what I'm saying now. And I was a loud voice in the run up to 2024. I took less shit for that. But I'm telling you what when you put these pieces together in the way, Brian, you just said, where he's got the Attorney General of the United States, He's got the FBI director, Kash Patel. Let's not forget him. He came to power and was put in place as an election denier. You've got Pete Hegseth at the overseeing the Department of Defense. You've got the National Intelligence Director, who we don't hear that much about, is still Tulsi Gabbard, who is part of this crazy bunch of conspiracy theorists. And then you have a hollowed out government. You have a government in which a lot of the good people have left. They've been forced out. They've been fired. The career people have been sidelined. And so that is a recipe for really, really problematic midterm elections. Now, what we need to do about that is not give up. What we need to do is be smart about that. But that is the truth.
And so, look, folks are going to, and we'll finish off with this, but folks are going to hear that, and it's hard not to have a sense of helplessness or despair. And by the way, I think that's the goal of this administration. If it's not the actual actions being taken by the administration itself, the sense that they're going to give people that they can't fight back, just that sense unto itself is going to be really effective for this administration as well. And so what is your message to folks who are listening to this, who are seeing what's happening around us, who are watching the ways in which the Trump administration is consolidating power and the executive branch is growing stronger and stronger, and the government continues to be hollowed out of people who would serve as bulwarks to the worst excesses of this administration and want to throw their hands up? How do you offer some sense of hope for people for whom hope seems all but disappeared?
Yeah, no, I have a lot of hope and I have a lot of optimism, despite all of those long odds. Okay. The fact is that if we simply give up hope, then we give Donald Trump, as you said, what he wants. So here's what I recommend. Number one, I need all of you to stop investing your time and energy to try to find the heroes in this administration. They do not exist. And don't grade them on a curve. Okay. The fact that there is some Republican somewhere in some agency or some staffer in some Hill office or some member of Congress who on one instance does something that is marginally decent does not make them a hero. Do not give them that power. Do not give this Department of Justice, this FBI, the power to decide whether something is right or wrong by your believing that somehow there is a hero hidden in the back room there. The second thing I need you to do, though, is to support the genuine heroes. These are the people like Governor Pritzker, like Governor Newsom, like Jamie Raskin in Congress, right? I mean, there are lots of people who are doing really hard work to protect democracy, who are standing up and are speaking out, and they need your support. So show them that support. Let them know that you appreciate what they are doing. Let Brian know by subscribing to this channel that you appreciate what he's doing, because he's standing up by keeping you informed every single day and calling it out like it is. The Democrats who are fighting in legislatures against unfair gerrymandering, stand up for them and let them know that you appreciate what they're doing. Because we are not without tools and we are not without allies. We have lawyers in courtrooms. We have allies in governor mansions and state legislatures, in city councils and in mayorships, in town offices, in clerks, in election officials, in civic groups, and in new media organizations. So, what I need you to do is I need you to support that pro-democracy infrastructure and stop trying to find the half-truths and the partial leaders among the people who have failed us already and will continue to fail us. The Washington Post is not going to solve this for us, but Brian Tyler Cohen might. The Republicans in Congress are not going to solve this, but Jamie Raskin might. And if we all band together and support those efforts and say we are going to insist on free and fair elections, and we're going to look out for our neighbors, and we're going to look out for our friends, and we're going to look out for people in our community who are potentially being targeted by disenfranchisement or not able to vote, the fact that we can vote, we are going to use our power to help them as well. If we do that, we'll get through this. It's not going to be a perfect election, but we'll get through it. I promise you we will. But we won't get through it if instead we are internally divided, with half the people saying, well, this is all is lost and there's no point in doing anything. And the other half of people are trying to find bipartisan heroes. If that's what we are, then we are screwed. But if we focus on the task at hand, electing Democrats to a majority in the House and the Senate, and we understand who our allies and friends are, then I have confidence we'll make it through.
And look, Mark won't say it, but I will. There is no bigger hero for democracy who is fighting on the front lines than him and his team. So again, a small step that we can all take for the attorneys who are going out into every single state, fighting against these illegal gerrymanders, fighting against all of the post-election litigation that Trump put forward. This is Mark and his team who are putting themselves in harm's way on the front line. So a small step we can all take to show some support is to sign up for Democracy Docket. I'm going to put that link again right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.